I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and I'm here in my more casual setting just because I feel like it. But I really feel like this needs to be talked about. I said in my initial review of the first episode of Netflix's Cowboy Bebop that I figured this show would be something people would talk about for like a week, and then it would be completely forgotten, and if Season 2 ever materialized, people would mostly just ignore it. I still feel that's true. Most of the videos I'm seeing crop up about it are still from like several days ago, so clearly it is starting to wind down. The videos are still getting attention, but people are just saying their piece and moving on. The thing is, though, there's a certain idea that's been circulating around in all of these different videos that I feel is something I need to address, because I think people are reaching the wrong conclusion about certain things. What I see a lot of people saying is that Cowboy Bebop, the Netflix version that is, serves as definitive proof that live-action adaptations of anime do not work. That is the conclusion I'm seeing a lot of people reach. More specifically, they say that when you get to the very end of the series and we finally get that shot of Edward, and yes, I have seen the clip, it is every bit as cringy as I was warned about, but they're saying that when we finally get to Edward, Edward is specifically cannot work because Edward in the original Cowboy Bebop was such a cartoony character that translating her into live action was just doomed to fail anyway. I feel like this is not the right conclusion to make, because, quite frankly, we do have an example of a live-action anime/manga adaptation that works perfectly. Alita Battle Angel from back in 2019. I know that Disney apparently wants that movie buried ever since they bought Fox, and no word has been made on a sequel as yet, but it does work. So, even the people who acknowledge that Alita Battle Angel was pretty good still sort of treat it more like it's the exception rather than the rule. It kind of feels like if a teacher assigns math homework and only one student gets that 1 + 1 = 2 and the rest think that 1 + 1 = 3 or 7 or fish or some other crazy answer, and thus the teacher concludes that there is no actual answer to the question of 1 + 1, not even the correct answer. And I don't think that's the takeaway we should be getting. Because you see, the thing is, the reason Netflix Bebop fails has nothing to do with the fact that it's switching mediums. If you can stomach it, I want you to watch the live-action clip of Edward again and contrast it with a clip of Edward from the original anime. And I think you'll notice that there really is a difference. Even though the live-action version was designed to look as close to Edward as possible, the performance is very different. In the original anime, yes, Edward acts very differently from the dark, brooding cast that surrounds her. But that's because she's a child. She's a free spirit. She is bubbly and bright and cheerful, but she's not obnoxious. The live-action Edward is obnoxious. Her introduction to the audience, if it even is a her, I've heard this version of Edward is supposed to be non-binary, but, you know, the character's female, I'm just sticking with her. When we first meet the live-action Edward, she's shoving her face right into the camera and shouting a Pee Wee Herman impersonation going, "Spike! Spike Spiegel!" like that. The original Edward didn't do that. That is not an issue of a character not being able to translate from animation to live action. That's a creative choice made in the live action version that didn't get what the original animated character was about. People, the fact of the matter is that it doesn't matter what medium you're in. If it's animation or live action, who cares? If a character is annoying, then a character is annoying. Did any of you ever see Conan the Destroyer, the sequel to the original Conan the Barbarian? Remember the comic relief guy in that movie? And how he was just so irritating, you wondered why nobody was running him through with a sword just on principle? He was a live-action character, he was just plain irritating. Meanwhile, in the realm of animation, I defy anyone to admit that they like the character of Elmira Duff from Tiny Toon Adventures, and a later ill-fated crossover with Pinky and the Brain. She was a character that was intentionally designed to be irritating, and you could say they did their job too well, because the only people who actually liked her were the network executives who wanted to give her a Simpsons-style spin-off. Everyone else pretty much hated her. Including, I think, the crew to a certain extent. And with those two examples, I don't think anything would really change if you put the animated character to live action or the live action character to animation. They would remain annoying if their personalities were unchanged. And that's the point. Edward's personality, from what I can see of this clip, was changed. She, much like Faye, is not the same character. And it's those changes that are the problem. The changes have nothing to do with the change in medium. Faye Valentine, if she were the exact same character in the live-action Bebop, switched over to animation, people would still not like her. You know why? Because it's the way she's written and the way she's performed that make her unlikable, that make people look at her and go, that's not Faye Valentine, that's not the character we fell in love with. Now, of course, I did bring up Alita Battle Angel as an example of how an anime can be adapted to live action and work incredibly well. For all intents and purposes, Alita Battle Angel is the Richard Donner Superman of anime adaptations. So how did it work? It seems like it shouldn't work, really, because if you line Battle Angel Alita up to Cowboy Bebop, objectively speaking, Alita should be the harder one to translate into live action. Cowboy Bebop's a fairly grounded series, all things considered. Ships that look like they've been through a lot and they're run down and broken. Characters who aren't really all that exaggerated. Not even Edward. Edward is a free spirit, like I said. Exaggerated to a degree, but not to the point where she is a literal cartoon character, like so many people seem to be claiming. Also, you have the darker themes, the more realistic setting, even if it is in outer space. But meanwhile, you go over to Battle Angel Alita, you have floating cities, bodies that are fusions of machine and flesh with very intricate designs. You have a freaking rocket-powered sledgehammer that a guy uses for bounty hunting. One of the most impractical weapons ever. Right up there with batarangs, Captain America's shield, flying guillotines, and any handheld weapon from a Super Sentai series. And yet, all of that stuff somehow made it into the movie, and it worked. And of course, let's not forget Alita herself. Even though every other character has generally normal proportions, Alita was designed to actually have an anime face. Like, the face of any anime character, unless the art style is done to look more realistic, which those kind of art styles do exist, but speaking generally, the kind of typical anime face is not a normally proportioned human face. And when people first saw it in that first trailer, they were like, creepy doll, not gonna work, this movie's doomed to fail. Of course, they tweaked it a little bit to make it a bit more palatable, a bit less creepy, but they didn't change it too much. It was still a very exaggerated face with huge eyes and unusual proportions that made it look like an anime head. But even that works. You would think it wouldn't. You would think there's no way you could translate that to live action. Even when that look is translated to 3 dimensions in like figures and statues and whatnot, it's still not a normal looking human face. Yet here we have Alita Battle Angel, and she looks fine. Part of it is because, admittedly, once you get over the initial surprise of how she looks, you generally don't notice. But the ultimate reason why it works is because the performance works. That's the thing. Alita's characterization and the performance by her actress, those made her so endearing that it really didn't matter that her head looked weird. 'Cause that's what won us over. Moreover, the entirety of Battle Angel was made by people who loved the source material. Netflix Bebop was mostly made because Cowboy Bebop is a popular title, and Netflix wanted to make money off of people's nostalgia for an anime that, despite being much older, still is considered very popular today. The thing is, though, that's all they wanted, and they handed it off to people who clearly did not get what the original series was about and what made it work. That's why Vicious became a pathetic man-child who's struggling with his masculinity, as opposed to the mysterious, vile, dangerous character he was in the original. That's why Ed is so obnoxious in the few seconds she appears on screen. That's why Faye is basically Faye Valentine in name only. All of that stuff and other bad decisions as well are the result of handing the series off to people who didn't understand the material, or maybe they just thought, we can do better than this garbage. Incorrectly, apparently. Whereas the people who made Alita Battle Angel, they looked at the manga, they looked at the OVA, and they thought, we genuinely love this. We think this is great. And quite frankly, Battle Angel's not really popular anymore. They technically could have done anything they wanted with it. They could have pulled the Guardians of the Galaxy and said, you know what? Nobody knows what this is. We're going to do whatever the heck we want. And then if anyone from the original comics doesn't like it, they'll just have to deal with it. But instead, they said, no, this works. This already works. We'll have to move some stuff around in order for it to fit a 3-act structure. But otherwise, this doesn't need altering. We don't need to turn Alita into a feminist icon because she already is one. We don't need to alter the world because it's already a well-realized world. We don't even have to get rid of any of the ridiculous stuff like the rocket sledgehammer because we just have to make it so the audience believes it. We need that verisimilitude. So we need to do this to the best of our abilities. We understand it. Now we're going to make sure everyone else understands why we understand it, and then they'll understand it along with us. That was a very convoluted way of saying it. Basically, it's like saying, we're going to show the world why we love this, and why they'll love it too. And that is why Alita Battle Angel worked. Even though, like I said, it technically shouldn't have been easier to adapt to live action than Bebop. It should have been harder. Even with the multi-million-dollar budget and the backing of a name like James Cameron, it should have been the difficult one to adapt. And by rights, you'd think it would have been more likely to fail. Instead, it succeeded. It's getting buried by the studio for some reason, but it still succeeded. And it's got a loyal fan base. It even brought back attention to the original manga, which got reprinted in these wonderful hardcovers now. So, that's the thing. That's what I'm driving at. The problem is not that anime simply cannot be adapted to live action. It's that it has to be adapted by the right people. Now, of course, that's not to say that it's always going to work. There are some things in animation that simply do not translate into live action and will have to be changed. That's inevitable. Heck, there are some anime that probably should never be adapted simply because they only work in animation. Fooly Cooly, I think, is a good example. Fooly Cooly exists solely because Studio Gainax had money to burn and they wanted to experiment with different animation styles. So, Fooly Cooly became their vehicle for that experimentation. It wound up being much more than that, of course. But that's the main reason it exists, so its very identity is tied to the fact that it's animated. And if you brought that to live action, even if you did it as something like Airplane or Hot Shots, it would still lose something. It's kind of like adapting Watchmen to live action. I'm actually one of the few people who likes the live action Watchmen movie, but even I can realize that something was lost in translation because the original Watchmen comic makes use of the fact that it is a comic book, and a lot of the stuff that it does can only be done in the medium of comics. You cannot translate that sort of thing to film. So that sort of thing, that does happen. There are some things that are so specific to the medium you just can't bring them into live action at all. But I don't think those are the rule. I don't think those comprise the majority of what we see in manga and anime. Like I said, Alita Battle Angel is the Richard Donner Superman of live-action anime adaptations. I say that because there was once a time where comic books were once considered unadaptable. People thought there's no possible way you can translate superheroes from the comics page to live action. Certainly not in a way where they'd be taken seriously. That's why we still have the Adam West Batman, because that's goofy, that's what those things are. Yet we look around today and see how many serious superhero movies can be produced by a single studio in a year, and we think, how did anyone ever believe that these things could not translate to film? The thing is, somebody just had to find the right way to do it, and then other people had to follow that example. That's the thing. Alita Battle Angel is our example. Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, as well as Dragon Ball Evolution, and Netflix's Death Note, and any other bad adaptation you can think of, those are the examples we shouldn't be following. We can use them as negative examples, sure. Look at this if you want to know what not to do. But to look at these and conclude that it's just impossible, even when there is an example staring you right in the face, that's not helpful. That's not constructive. So I just had to get that out there, folks. I do agree that the live-action Bebop is a disaster. Like I said, I couldn't even make it past the first episode, and that's not even the only show I've done that with this year. I'm looking at you, La Brea, but it's certainly the one I felt like I had to actually say something about. But concluding that it's proof that anime simply cannot be translated into live action is the wrong lesson to be taking away from it. It can work. It has worked. We just need to focus on those. Stop drawing so much attention to the negative stuff for once, and put some emphasis on the positive stuff, the stuff that does work, the stuff that can be used as an example of how to move forward. That's how we're going to make progress in this field. That's how we're going to get an Alita sequel, and how we're going to get good adaptations moving forward. Now that being said, I'm sure Netflix's live-action One Piece is still going to be a disaster. We're still going to get some bumps in the road, but the fact is, we shouldn't be veering off the road entirely. And that's where I stand on the matter. Okay, now I'm done talking about the live-action Bebop. Though maybe I should talk more about the live-action Alita Battle Angel. Well, we'll see. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books, Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.